morning. It's already 10:45. I got up at 7. I didn't do anything though. Actually, it wasn't really that cold. It was quite nice actually. It was cold, but it was nice. Okay, so it's an admin day. It's Monday, and I need to just be on the computer. I've got to file some things and do some things and get some music on my videos. Just do what I can till my hand starts hurting, and then I'll be done. But yeah, taking the day off from exercising. I do need to go take a shower. Wasn't going to, but I've got to be on Zoom twice today for my one of them is for the scholarship that we're creating for my professor that passed away in 2023, my mentor from college, everything. So we're creating a scholarship for a rising sophomore for my college in Indiana where I went to school. So it's pretty exciting. So I'm on the board for that. So we're just trying to figure that out and how we're going to design it and all that stuff. So although we have homecoming at my college, we also have a journalism school within it. And I went to a school called Franklin College, and a really, really amazing school. And is in Franklin, Indiana, just south of Indianapolis. And it's the Pulliam School of Journalism. So I got a scholarship to go there. And I had work study and loans and all that stuff. So I did work. I didn't just like freeload. You know, I did actually bust my ass, but I had written for the LA Times and I had a column in the local paper in high school. Like I worked as a journalist. I did some internships in England when I was 16, BBC and local newspapers and a radio station. So I met Cliff Richard, if you know British artists. But yeah, I met him. He was at the radio station one day. And it was all these old ladies like swooning over him. I'm like, pretty sure he had one song I know from like the 70s or the 80s, but no, he was in the Shadows. I think he was in a bunch of different bands, but anyway, I know him most for the Young Ones when he did that song with them. But anyway, Living Doll, that's it. Yeah, so he did that song when I was like, I don't know, 5-6 years old. I don't know if I should be watching the Young Ones when I was that age, but we did. We only had 4 TV channels and 1 television. So anyway, so back to me. So yeah, so I've got that. I've got another call that I have to do for some personal stuff, and then I just need to be on the computer. I haven't been on the computer pretty much all week, but yesterday was good. Yesterday was a good ride. I'm not even sore or anything. I don't even feel like I rode 68 miles yesterday, but I just don't feel like doing the whole production of riding, and then I need to shower mostly, and so by the time I'd be done, it'd be like 4 o'clock. So it's 10:45 now. I have a call at 12:30 and a call at, well, maybe 11:30. I don't know. I'm on different time zones. I think I have a call at 12:30 and I have a call at 1, but I think I'm going to cancel the 12:30 call because the one at 1 o'clock is for the scholarship. The one at 12:30 I just have to call the VA. So I think I'll cancel the VA one. I can do that again later. But that's it. So yeah, so I'm just kind of I don't know. I don't know. Just kind of doing my thing. And then, yeah, so just gonna have admin day. Dinner was good last night. I woke up hungry. And I just dumped out my toilet as well. So it is cold. It's 48 degrees right now. It's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. It's a little hazy today. But I had so much fun in Santa Fe. I hadn't gone up there since September. And I just forgot like how amazing it was. The only reason I'm not up there now is because I would park in the ski valley and I think it's snowing at 10,000 feet. I don't want to go down the icy roads in the morning. There's nowhere really in town to park, although one of my bike friends said there's a gravel lot by his house that people park in, but I don't want to just go to the place people get away with stuff. Like, that doesn't help. So I'd rather go to the place where it's actually legal and not the iOverlander place where everybody's like, you know, oh, lucked out this time at Zilker Park in Austin, no ticket. I'm like, yeah, but you will get a ticket. And I've never had a ticket my entire life. Like, never. No parking tickets, nothing. And I've driven on 6 continents, including Japan for 4 years. So yeah, so after this, I need to definitely charge my power banks, which is another reason I'm not going to be spending the whole day riding my bike. So yeah, just kind of, I got a list of stuff to do, people to call, you know, what is it, people to do, things to see. I don't know. But yeah, so that's it. And then I'm just gearing up to leave here Thursday morning to home. It's been a kind of a slow week, actually. Some of these weeks go by quickly, but this past week was actually kind of pretty chill. But yeah, going to the hospital, having like horrible neck pain. Pain's gone away. That's really good. So I'm kind of taking it easy as well. I don't know if being on the computer for a couple hours today is going to cause the pain to come back. I'm not sure. But there's some big exciting changes coming up in January. I will be home for like 19 days, I think. I'll be home for quite a while, 3 weeks almost. And then I don't know if I'll go down to Schoolie-palooza. There might be some changes happening. Oh, this video will come out way afterwards, but there might be some changes happening with family stuff. So I don't know. I'm not going to say anything right now, but I might have to build a bigger van. So it'd be wonderful. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I may go back to Houston for a few months. I'm not sure. I don't know. But I'm just kind of like laying low and just kind of keeping my options open, and also having my ability to change on a whim, because I really don't know what's happening. So we'll see. So I'll find out January 7th what's going to happen. And then, yeah, Jeff's anniversary of his death is coming up. Still don't have him out of the lab. Still need to get LAPD to do their job. I'm like, I did their job for them. I would like them to also do their job and get this done, because his mother took all the money. She took the cars. She sold everything. The ex-wife just was like so angry at Jeff for whatever. And I'm like, wait a minute, you took a vow, woman. And I have his journal, and his journal paints a very different picture than what she's painting, and people don't lie to their journals. So I am horrified of the situation that he's, you know, was illegally donated by his mother, or because of money. I'm like, you get a free funeral with the military. Like, I already got it all sorted. And so she was like, well, I don't want to pay for a funeral. I'm like, you don't have to. And so donating the body to science just meant that she could do one last nail in the coffin, so to speak, and get back at the ex-wife and get back at everybody else and take control, because that's what she does, and then get control of his money. And then the ex-wife didn't want to give any of it to the daughter, which is what it should have happened. Like, the little girl, the 11-year-old girl, his daughter was, you know, the heir to everything, but the ex-wife, who has all the money in the world, didn't care to do that. And now she threw everything of Jeff's away. So I need to write a strongly worded letter to her, because I'm like, you know what? You're erasing Jeff from your daughter's memory. Parental alienation. I don't care what beef you have with your ex-husband. It takes two to tango, and I tell you something, it wasn't him. It wasn't all him, you know, in the marriage. The reason you guys got divorced. And plus, you don't divorce somebody when they're in the ICU. Stupid woman. I have no love for that woman. I've met her one time, and the only thing she did was tell the pastor to get up there and say, you know, the ex-wife gave an email to me that said that Jeff was not a man of God, so when he died, he didn't see Jesus. I'm like, oh, go screw yourself. Seriously. Like, how dare you? He was the most loving, beautiful person that I've ever known. He loved everything. Just because he didn't have conventional religion doesn't mean he's a bad person and should be condemned to hell. How dare you? Anyway, I'm at the gym now. Let me park right here. I'm gonna go shower. It should be pretty quick. I'll just park down here. It's like trying to put toothpaste back in the tube. I need to be in the sun, so let me go down this end. But yeah, so just all the whole drama of it. I'm like, at the end of the day, Jeff died. And can we just focus on that and focus on giving him some dignity so that he can have, you know, a dignified, you know, just a way to say goodbye? Can we have somewhere we can just go visit him? Somewhere for his daughter? So I was going to go drop off all of the stuff for Jeff when I went to Nashville the other week. But after I found out what his ex-wife did, giving everything to the mother, not because she likes the mother, just because she hates Jeff. I mean, as you know, this kind of goes both ways. And so I ended up deciding that, you know what, I'm just going to keep everything. And then when his daughter is 18 in 9 years, I'm going to go ahead, or 7 years, I'm going to go ahead and just make a way of giving everything to her and letting her know what a wonderful person her daddy was. Because by then she's going to be brainwashed by that woman. Seriously, I don't know. I don't care about, you know, keeping everything under wraps, because the love of my life, my best friend, my soulmate, is chopped up in a lab. And I'm sick to my stomach thinking about it. Like, that's somebody I was tangible with, right? And to think that his body is not whole. And I'm not religious, but I do believe that people should have dignity in death. You know, whatever your belief is about the afterlife, I do believe everybody should have dignity. I don't think, you know, not in his situation, because I know that his body was so ravaged from everything that there's no way that he could have donated any organs to science. What they would have done is used him for IEDs or use him for crash test dummies, you know, which they do, you know, because crash test dummies don't end up with body parts in the air vents of your car in a car crash. So they use bodies for other stuff, but they tell you that they're using it for science, for med students to practice organ transplants. But I'm like, Jeff was under 100 pounds, 6'4", under 100 pounds, missing a leg, his entire body ravaged. He was nothing. I mean, his skin was molten, like molted, like what did they say, like gray skin, and he looked like he was 90 years old. There was nothing any viable organ transplant class would have found him useful or anything. I just can't believe it. I can't believe that he didn't have, you know, he wanted to be cremated. He did not want to be donated to science, and he had a DNR, do not resuscitate. None of that was respected, and I think that's the hardest thing, is that he had no respect whatsoever, and he was not respected, and he's not here, and it's just been really hard. So I don't know, but I don't think I'm going to be involved with any of, you know, his mother, obviously, or his ex-wife. I will just wait until his daughter is 18, and then a bunch of us, we're going to all kind of write letters about Jeff and put a whole bunch of stuff together, and then when she's 18, you know, we can go meet up with her and give it to her and be like, this is who your dad was. And you know, because my mom did that to me, right? My mom is dementia now. My mom's in a nursing home. I just found out like 4 days ago that she had been really sick, and now she's committed to a nursing home, but she's like almost 80 years old. But my mom told us that my dad was this horrible person for years, and then I found out when I was 21, when I got hold of my dad, and then he got diagnosed with colon cancer a year later, and then he died a year after that. So I got to speak to him for about 2 years before he died, and while I was in Japan. And I was very like angry in the first one. I'm like, well, you left us, you abandoned us. He goes, no, I didn't even know where you were. And then I found out that we were illegally moved without his permission or consent from the UK to America. We're American, we're allowed to live in America, but we were living as expats in the UK. And I didn't know, all those times that we had gone down to the US Embassy every 6 months or so for various different things when I was a kid. I always thought it was fun to go to London and go to the US Embassy and all the American people and see the big gold eagle on top of the building and all the protesters about protesting Reagan and the Iran-Contra, you know, deal and all this stuff. And I thought it was so exciting, but I didn't realize that that my dad had no idea that we had moved to America or where we were. And yeah. So it wasn't until after he started sending me boxes of documents and things that I realized that there's two sides to a story. And just because there's two sides doesn't mean that one side is anywhere remotely right. And unfortunately, as a child, all through until I was 21, I was fed this narrative from my mom that I haven't had a relationship with my mom probably since then. I mean, peripherally, I don't know, on the periphery. Sorry, words are not happening this morning. But even then, like, she didn't really have a relationship with my daughter, and I kind of stayed as far away because I didn't trust her. And that's not how to be a parent. So the parental alienation of my father meant that I missed out on that entire decade from 1991 until 2000. Well, and from 1990 to 2000. Actually, no, I think he left in 88. Yeah, so when I was 10 years old, that was the last time I saw him, until when he was dying, and then I saw him again before he died. And I was so like angry at my mother. I'm like, you robbed me of 12 years of my dad's life. You know, no parent gets to tell the children who to love. What each parent needs to do is be a good person, and be a good person to their kids, because if you're a parent, you are each other's ex. You're not the child's ex if you split up, right? And so alienating the kids to spite the parent, to think that that's going to make you look better. It's like blowing out someone else's candle doesn't make your candle brighter. And that's really what my mom did. And what did she get out of it? Nothing. I mean, now she's in a nursing home with just my brother there. I mean, my sister lives in England and I'm not anywhere near there. But it's just, you know, it was really horrible that my dad was great. My dad got me into all the like BMX riding and took us to the military bases and like taught us how to play pool and snooker, which is British, you know, pool game, I guess. And also how to, you know, shoot a rifle and go on canal trips. And he was just really great. I mean, you know, it's just, and his girlfriend was nice. He had his, I think she was Welsh, I don't know. He had some girlfriend that always would take care of us as well, and she was nice. And yeah, I mean, it was was great. I only have good memories, and the only time he ever yelled at me was when I think it was at a McDonald's in London, and McDonald's was a treat there. Like, you don't eat McDonald's like you do here, like every day. We would get dressed up to go to McDonald's. And then Pizza Hut was a real sit-down restaurant where they'd bring you the pizza with a deep dish and like the little, black container thing, and you get, scoop the pizza slice out. But we go to McDonald's, I think we're in the McDonald's in London, and I ordered a chocolate milkshake, and I must have been 6 or 7, I think, I don't know. And I remember, like, I went to go pick it up, and the lid wasn't on right, and it squeezed, and it spilled all over me. And that's the only time I remember that he ever got mad at me. And it was just because we were in London and we didn't have a change of clothes, and I was crying because I was covered in chocolate milkshake, and I don't really drink chocolate milkshake. So, but other than that, my dad was great, and I really wished that he was around. I think he would have been out there hiking the Himalayas with me, and just being really supportive. But I remember the first conversation, I was very angry the first sentence, and then he just started crying. And he said that I sounded just like my older sister. He's 12 years older, and we had a really good first conversation. And then I took notes. I didn't have any way to record the conversations, so I have no recording of his voice, which is kind of interesting. I don't have any record of him speaking, like no recordings. There might be in the stuff that was willed to me, because my sister and my brother, same thing as Jeff's ex-wife, didn't want anything to do with my dad when he died. They were all like, taking my mom's side. But I am a journalist, and I was like journalist Jennie when I was talking to him, as well as daughter Jennie. But I just wanted to know the truth. And he sent me all these dossiers and things about his life as an oil engineer in the Middle East and all the problems and things that were going on. He advocated for the rights of foreign workers, and he taught at the Qatar University, and he was living in Doha, in Qatar or Qatar. And, he meant well always. And he would always have all these like parables or, words of advice, be like, Jennifer, I had 14 months, or I had 14 months of a great marriage spread over 17 years. I was like, thanks, Dad. But that's the thing, is like, he was just, our conversations were really great. And every Friday for 2 hours, we'd talk on the phone while I was in Japan or wherever I was in the world. And we always had dinner, like all the foreigners in my town or the nearby towns would get together on Friday nights. We'd have dinner at Izakaya, which is like a beer snack restaurant. And they'd always save me a spot because they knew I was talking to my dad. And it was great. And I cherished the 2 years that we talked to each other. And I tried to get him out of the Middle East, tried to get him back to the States for treatment. But he had a lot of red tape to go through regarding visas and passports and things like that. And we just couldn't get him out. So when he died, I went through the British Embassy to get him, where he needed to go. But yeah, and I think my sister did help with getting him transported back, and then he's buried in New Jersey. And it's a place I can go. I don't really believe in the afterlife. I'm not good with cemeteries, but it's a place I can go and I guess go see him. I don't really sit there and talk to him or anything, And then, but I would rather have had him here. He would have been 83 or 84. I think he would have been 84 next year. And he would have, if he wasn't sick, because he was a heavy smoker and drinker and worked in the oil industry, so he got to, live kind of a lavish lifestyle. And he was only 59 when he died, but he had extensive colon cancer, but never had screenings. And so, speaking of which, I need to have my colonoscopy on January 16th. So that will be fun. So both ends. So let me know when you meet in the middle. So, all right, let me go shower. I'm going to cancel the 12:30 call, which I think is 11:30, because I think now it's 11 and I'm not going to have time to get on the call. So I will talk to you guys later, and that's it. So, okay, bye.